Hello everyone. Just a quick couple notes about the channel before we get into the video. Thank you to everyone who applied to participate in my casted games. We are full presently, but they're all chugging along nicely, so new games will open up soon. If you want to get in on any future games that I will potentially cast, please join my community Discord. There's a link in the description of this video, as well as on my YouTube page. Secondly, these types of videos take a precious amount of time to make, so if you feel like these are worth watching or worth upgrading, please feel free to see my Subscribestar donation page in the description. It's a system very similar to Patreon. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. Over the mountains to the south of Archaecephaly, there lies a gleaming gold and marble city. Here, a race of exalted giants, Gigantes, have watched the old races be destroyed by the injustices of previous Pantocrators. Proud and endowed with mythical strength, the Gigantes have made themselves rulers over men and enslave what humans they conquer. They seek to declare Gigantomachia, the war upon the gods. Mekone is a nation led by high-quality and well-armored Gigantes supported by hordes and hordes of human slaves and elemental magic. They have no sacred troops, as the Gigantes must be truly devoted to the Gigantomachia to be bestowed such a trait. Every fall at the Crepia, the E4s would, as a matter of doctrine, declare war on the Helot, aka slave population, so that any Gigante could kill a human without fear of blood guilt, in order to stifle unrest and take out troublesome Helots. Thus Mekone constantly gains unrest, averaging about 8 in their forts, and loses a couple hundred province population every year. So let's look at their strengths and weaknesses. First, they have a very strong early game and pretty easy expansion. They have very powerful Gigantes that all have Formation Fighter, and they have super massable slave armies, either with javelins or with 17 protection. They also have commanders that are practically pre-made thugs, those being either pole marks or archons. They have super combatants with their Elder Cyclops, Fire 2, Earth 2, Air 2 can Cloud Trapeze with superb HP, magic resistance, and morale, but they do need gear. You have total elemental mastery as Mekone via your Master Smith trait on your Elder Cyclopses, and your Palisades provide 2 commander points, so you do not have to upgrade them another level to get that extra point. Mekone has some pretty awful weaknesses. They have a constant income drain. Their forts constantly produce unrest, and your forts also pop kill. You have no recruitable sorcery magic outside of expensive conjuration spells. Your priests are terrible. You have no Holy 3 priests, and all of your priests pay extra for the Inquisitor trait. You have a limited amount of Gigante recruitment, and you're very cap-strained. You have several cap-only mages that are all needed in varying amounts. So with Elemental Mastery, Mekone is a nation very tilted to a mid-game power spike. They do have some staying power in the late game, but they do fall off very hard in the ultra-late game if they cannot get good sorcery access. So let's talk about their units. So we're going to talk about the first 3 Helots. The Peltast, for their price, is an excellent chaff unit. They cost 8 gold up front and 3 per year, which means you have to make 4 of them in order to cost you a single coin per turn. With a low resource and recruitment cost, these things are super massable. And with a javelin, they can do a lot of damage before getting into melee, especially when massed, which is, again, very easy. In melee, they have a spear, so they can defend themselves, but they are squishy humans. Without magic like Marble Warriors, these guys will die in droves, but that's okay because they're super cheap. The big problems are 7 morale, but you've got Taskmaster on your commanders and inspirational leaders. But without further items, it's really just a matter of time until the Peltasts start running away. Also, if they get promoted, they turn into
Neodemodes,
which does actually give them a slightly stronger bronze hat. Also, their morale becomes 10. However, they lose their slave tag. And since so many of your commanders have Taskmaster 2, it means in practice that their morale goes up by 1 point. However, their upkeep doubles. These are fantastic for siege cracking, and flaming arrows, in this case flaming javelins, gives them a lot more killing power. This is the Helot Ekdromos. I never make these units. They are gold-wise priced exactly the same as the Peltast. They have worse defense, a much higher resource cost, and a slightly higher protection rating. However, the most protected part of their body is their helmet. Their chest plate is still very, very poor. They do have formation fighters, so they do have decent attack density. But ultimately, these guys are very, very squishy. The Hoplite has the price of a Peltast, but with 17 protection. These guys can hold for a while. They also have Formation Fighter, and with protection buffs and an Inspirational Leader, these guys become very efficient line holders. These are excellent chaff units. Their primary issue is they eat up a lot of resources, so they will block out some of the Gigante production that you can make, as your giants are all pretty resource intensive. There are also some free humans. These are like the Peltas, except they are more expensive. They have a lot more upkeep, but they have +1 morale. I would never make these. And here you have your discus throwing naked man, the Disco Bolus. He is an excellent mimetic warrior chassis with strength of giants. His discus tossing ability becomes legendary. Also with natural protection boosters, he has pretty good attack density, but without those, these units kind of suck. They eat up a lot of money. They have extremely low protection. However, what they hit with their discus, they will kill normally. So they have use as very high damage ranged attackers. And they do have 18 map move. The later the game goes, the better they get. The Gigante Ekdromos is a wonderful unit, has very good stats, high HP, decent protection. Unfortunately, much like the Disco Bolus, he is limited recruitment, so you can only make 5 in your capital or 2 in your non-capital forts. With 18 map move, they are very quick and can get across many provinces. However, they tend to get chopped up in a maintained battle where they don't heavily outclass their opponents, as their protection is not very good. So following the trend with most of your units, with protection buffs, these guys become very, very good. Finally, you have the Gigante Hoplite, who costs an incredible 75 resources, but a pretty good 40 gold. It's an Ekdromos, but with 18 protection on the body. These guys are insane. They hit very hard and are very hard to hit back. You can't make many a turn, but they are well worth it, and they will make your armies gleaming. Furthermore, all of their equipment is magical, so you're resistant to equipment breakage. So on to the commanders. We'll start with the scout. He is a human scout, always nice to have one. I don't ever see a reason to make these. They can't lead Gigantes, because what Gigante would be led around by a puny size 2 human? They don't have good leadership value, so you can't put your units in formation, and they don't have Taskmaster, so the troops that they lead will frequently run away. Compare that to the Locos, who is a good commander that brings your slaves up to 10 morale and lets them be in formations. And here we have the Geronte, or as I like to call him, the Geriatric. He is a research monkey, primarily. He can random fire 1 or earth 1. As with all the old men from here on out, you can take the Unaging Bless to remove the trait from them, giving them higher stats than what is shown. With Unaging, some of them could be used to be like really budget thugs. The Earth ones can Iron Skin and do some work. Fire ones can't do very much, but with a gem, they can cast Phoenix Power, Pyre, Fire Shield. It's possible to kill light PDs with these, especially if you have a big Bless. These guys also are a pretty decent leader. While their leadership value is only 30, they do get a squad morale bonus of +1, and they can put units in formation, and they do have Taskmaster. The E4 is needed for your annual pogrom against the Helots. Make sure you have one in all your forts before summer is over, or else you'll get a bunch of unrest in your forts. but you don't get the pop kill, unrest, removal, and assassin commander. On his own, he's not that much different than the geriatric, except he has much better magic paths. 2/3 of the time, he could be Fire 2 or Earth 2, which are both very useful. Sometimes he's Air 1. I like to use those to site search. They need air gems to do any more. But your Earth 2 and Fire 2 guys are totally adequate battle mages. The Archon is your primary non-capital battle mage. With the latest patch, Archons are now recruit anywhere. It used to be cap only. They do take 2 turns to make, being either Fire 3, Air 2, or Earth 3. Fire 3s can do practically whatever you want. Flaming arrows, elementals, they can thug with pyre, they can cast heat from hell, fire fend. Earth 3s can also elemental spam. They can do Curse of Stones, Maws of the Earth. They can buff themselves, buff an army. They can cast your special spell, Sow Dragon Teeth. I think Air 2s are the most exciting because they can Cloud Trapeze, so they can intercept the movement of armies, as magical movement always happens before mundane movement. They can cast Misform, Mirror Image, plus with a customized set of gear, they can crush unprepared armies. Their stats are not bad at all. So in review of your non-cap mages, the geriatrics are your primary research monkeys. You want an E4 on all your forts, but since they're sort of just a worse version of an Archon, I would always prioritize making Archons when you can. The first cap-only mage, the Polemarch, is good. He's a thug in a box. He has combat caster, so fatigue from casting spells, thanks to his heavy armor, is not as bad as it should be. Fire 2 and Earth 2 can do all the cool tricks listed already, but they can also cast Magma Eruption. Basically the good stuff that you want with these guys: summon Earth or Phoenix Power, Iron Skin, Fire Shield, Temper Flesh. When you get later, you can just cast Phoenix Pyre. They're very tanky to mundane stuff, and they can be very killy with a Fire Shield against humans. They are great leaders. They can be blessed, but they need another mage to do that for them, or a flask of holy water. If you have another mage following these guys to buff them before the battle starts, they can become very powerful. Their equipment isn't the best. Gleaming stuff is sort of encumbering, and the God-slaying spear is okay. It's worse than an enchanted spear, but it does have the neat Bane of Heresy effect, which can be useful in some situations. The Elder Cyclops is a beast. He has superb HP, big strength, very high magic paths, and Master Smith. You can get Fire 3s, Air 2s, Water 1s, or Earth 3s. And sometimes you'll get something better, but you really shouldn't count on it. The Air 2 versions of Elder Cyclopses are basically Archons on crack. They can level battlefields if geared right. They're also your ticket into the higher tiers of elemental magic. So here's a picture I made to help demonstrate how to climb down the elemental paths with the Cyclops. So they start with Fire 2, Air 1, and Earth 2. A fourth of them will be Fire 3s. Keep in mind that the Cyclops has Master Smith, so effectively they're +1 in all the paths that they have for forging purposes. So the Fire 3 guys can forge this helmet, which gives +1 fire magic. If we skip over here, a fourth of your Cyclopses will be Water 1s. And with Water 1, they can make this bracelet. They can put on the bracelet, which then lets them make this robe. And then they can put on the robe. While wearing the robe, the bracelet, and the helmet, the Water Mage can make a Staff of Elemental Mastery, giving +1 to all elemental paths. Your Cyclopses that get +1 air and are Air 2s can hold the Staff of Elemental Mastery to then make an air helmet, and then they can put on the air helmet and make a Bag of Wind. Finally, your Earth guys can wear Earth boots and hold the Staff of Elemental Mastery, and in doing so, you can get a mage that is capable of casting all of the elemental royalty. The fire helmet equipped on your Fire 3 Cyclops plus the staff, he is Fire 5, so he can cast King of Elemental Fire. Your Air 2 mage with the hat, the bag, and the staff will be Air 5 and can cast Queen of Elemental Air. Your Earth 3 mage wearing Earth shoes and holding the staff will be Earth 5 and can cast King of Elemental Earth. And finally, your Water 1 mage with a water bracelet, a robe, and a staff can contact the Sea King's Court. You're generating a Water 3 mage, and then you can give the bracelet and the robe to your Water 3 mage, making them Water 5, and they can cast Queen of Elemental Water. And once you have all 4 pieces of Exodia assembled, you can do whatever elemental magic you want. The final cap-only mage is the Basilius, and he is good, but not as good as your other mages. He is your only Holy 2 priest in your nation, so with Inquisitor he counts as Holy 4 for preaching, if you'd want to use him for that. He has reliable access to water. He is your only mage that has this reliable access, and he can be Water 2. He is also the only mage that can cast one of your national spells. You surely want at least one of these for casting that spell because it's a pretty good buff, but frankly, you have a lot of other Fire 2, Earth 2 mages, and you can get up higher water without using these guys for their randoms. Mekone has only a single hero, but he's good. He's basically a polemarch with better combat stats. He has no helmet, no shield. He does have +1 earth magic. He is a Holy 2 priest, and he has immortality in your dominion. For defensive purposes, this guy is an incredible asset. While he can't teleport or cloud trip he's around, he is a constant threat that can keep your land safe. You can throw him at your opponents who have to kill him again and again and again. So let's talk about Mekone's national spells. The first one that I want to talk about is the Blessing of the Godslayer, which this is the spell I mentioned that only the Basilius can cast, as he is the only Water 1, Holy 1 mage that you have. It's a very nice buff to your polemarchs. As this is a spell, it does trigger before movement or battles, so you can pop this right before an important battle, but it only lasts for 1 year. Also, there is no prompt that the game will give you when it goes down, so you have to be aware of when it disappears off your polemarch. You can summon a Hound of Twilight, which is a big HP dog that hits hard. It can paralyze undead with its 2 attacks, making it pretty good against undead thugs. And it has 3 attacks in total, one of which is a deadly poison. It also comes with Fear 5, so you can shuffle a couple of these into your front line to make them scary. It's not a bad unit by any means. It's just Earth 2, Death 1 is a taxing cross path for you to acquire. You could summon specters or find bone readers lying around. Depending on what nation you're fighting, they can be very worth the 4 Earth gems. Next, at Conjuration 5 is Procession of the Underworld, where you can spend 13 death gems to get 12 lampads. These are invulnerable 15 women that do a Banefire decaying attack in an area effect of 1, and you get an adequate number of them considering the death gems. They can also be Gift of Reasoned to turn into a Astral 1, Death 2, Nature 1 mage, which is fantastic, and it opens up most of the sorcery tree for you, primarily Astral. They can also be used for Stygian paths to remove the possible damage units can take while traveling. Sow Dragon Teeth. So this is a combat spell, not a ritual spell. You can spend 1 earth gem to get 10 of these Spartae, which are basically gleaming skeletons. They have a magic spear attack with very high DPS, and they have great protection. And best of all, they're technically not undead, so they are not vulnerable to undead stuff. At Conjuration 6, you can spend 12 death gems to get 3 curs, or maybe carries. It's a poor trade, but these units are great. They can produce 6 attacks per square with their size 2, and much like the Hounds of Twilight, these also stop the dead, so they are a paralyzer. They are flying, stealthy, invisible ethereal beings with very high stats. Furthermore, if you cast Gift of Reason on them, they become a Death 1, Blood 1 mage, which is your special way into blood magic. They need buffs to raise their protection, but they are excellent against ethereal and mistform targets. These can be made into superb thugs. At Construction 7, you get this big dumb fire-breathing bull. 30 fire gems is pretty pricey, and the paths of magic here mean you're consuming a pretty valuable mage turn to produce this thing. but this guy can melt a lot of chaff, and he is very tanky. And your last spell is the Gigantomachia, the War Upon the Gods. For 60 Earth Gems, Earth 4, Fire 4, and a global slot, you get 3 things. You get +1 Gigante recruitment in all your forts, which can normally double Gigante production. 2, it gives +3 conflict bonus on Dominion, and it gives -10 gold to all your giants, including your mages and troops. This also reduces their upkeep. Is the Gigantomachia worth the price? I would say so. It used to be much inferior in the previous version of Mekone, but now it helps alleviate one of your principal weaknesses, that being your intense income drain and limited recruitment. The conflict bonus is sorta a meme, but I could see it working in some weird cases. But producing Gigantes for 30 gold, or even 20 for Disco Man, is a great deal. It lets you replenish your armies very cheaply, and it'll also save you a lot of money the turn you cast it, because presumably by this point in the game you've got Elder Cyclopses, Polemarchs, all this expensive stuff floating around, and all of those units will start costing you less gold per turn. You were already going to get an Earth 4, Fire 4 Mage by item boosting, so that requirement is not difficult to reach. Mekone gets a single national item, the Godslayer Spear. It's an easy to forge spear, but it has poor stats. It's inferior to even an enchanted spear. It does cause 15 fatigue damage in an AoE 1, similar to Middle Age Olm's Guardians, meaning they have a niche against Sacreds. Mekone also gets 3 items they have a discount on, because of course Mekone would get a discount on a golden Hoplon. 8 fire gems or 6 with a hammer is not that bad. The parry value is very high, and it gives a massive amount of fire resistance. It can be useful against Abyssia or other fire-inclined nations. Also at Construction 4 is the Elemental Armor, which is good armor that gives good resistances against all elemental damage. This is absolutely worth making, and shaving a couple gems off the top makes it even better. The Shield of Gleaming Gold is largely the same as the Golden Hoplon statistically, except this gives you +1 awe. It can be useful if you can couple it with more awe effects, or if you're fighting a big bunch of low morale troops. Mekone has a somewhat limited selection of Pretender chassis, so I'll just go over a few that I found useful. So this is an Awake Monster Expander. It makes your early game easier. You can consistently get a lot of land. It also puts regen on your Bless, which is very nice with your Polemarchs, makes them very tough. The scales are kind of icky, but for mid-game power spikes, they work fine. So this guy wakes up on turn 12. The scales scale somewhat effectively. The Bronze Colossus is just a super combatant that can win wars on his own. I'm not sure this particular Bless is the best way to do it. If you gear him out like with more magic resistance, he becomes really unstoppable. So here we have the Imprisoned Late Game Demi-Lich. This is your only chassis that's going to give you a lot of magic diversity, because all of your other chassis cost a lot for other paths of magic. This guy takes all the magic paths that Mekone gets normally 0 access to, so your late game potential is everywhere, and the Bless is very versatile. I just picked these because they seemed good in a vacuum, but you can change them based off your preferences. The Mother of Monsters Bless here is similar to the Demi-Lich, except with her, you're going for Tartarians, and your Bless is specifically geared around getting them. So this is trying to compensate for Mekone's weakness in the ultra late game. Lastly, I have 2 Scales Pretenders. The Fertility statue is the cheapest one that you have access to. It gives you a good variety of magic. I took Astral because you want some late game power apart from nature. It's a fine Bless. It makes your old men not old with unaging, or you get a lot more value out of your E4s or geriatrics as far as thugs go. And yeah, these scales will help you out a lot. This is another Scales Pretender, slightly better scales, and instead of Astral, we have Death, which gets you the Blood Astral, and with these paths you can get Astral and Blood via your summons. I like this one a little bit more because you can use Death to do a gimmicky teleport with your land pads, and it still gives you unaging. Expansion for you should be relatively easy. Gigante Hoplites can clear everything in big enough numbers. A party of 6+ is generally enough, or you can try expanding with E4s plus 1 turn recruitment of straight Helot Peltasts. Peltasts are pretty good for expansion, especially against unarmored troops or those without shields, such as barbarians, lizards, or the like. If you took a Big Bless or an Awake Expander, of course this phase will be easier. It's possible to expand with just your Prophet alone if you recruit a Polemark turn 1 and then turn him into a Prophet turn 2. And of course, you have a very big Bless. You can also make a full set of Black Steel Full Plate for an Elder Cyclops and turn him into your Prophet if you want like a super gimmicky early game super combatant. I like to expand with a Polemark and a handful of Gigante Hoplites on Guard Commander once I have enough resources in my capital. With Stone Skin, the Polemark can defeat most indies, but Heavy Cab and Barbs are pretty hard without Iron Skin, or just more protection in general. Of course, get as many provinces as you can, and keep in mind that your forts cost 750 gold and an extra turn to build, so get them up sooner rather than later. For magic, get construction 2 so your Air 1 E4s can make Owl Quills, or your E3s or E2 Cyclopses can make Dwarven Hammers. Alteration 4 gets you Earth Meld, Iron Skin, Mist Form, and Temper Flesh. Conjuration 3 gives you all the powers. Enchantment 4 gets you Fire Shield, Strength of Giants, Flaming Arrows, and also Cloud Trapeze. When you find Nature 1 Indies, consider summoning Wolves at Conjuration 3 to help you patrol forts. Otherwise, after the Pogrom, you'll get an Assassin unit that is an excellent patroller, and you should have one on all your forts. Peltasts can be used to patrol since they're super cheap and massable. For site searching, get an Air 1 out as soon as possible, and preferably search everywhere at least level 2, and look for indies to search Astral, Death, Nature, and Blood. In the mid-game, you want to make Polemarks, who are going to be your primary thugs, and Elder Cyclopses to act as defensive super combatants while climbing up the elemental tree. For research, go for Evocation 7 for Storm, Earthquake, Rain of Stones, and Firestorm, Construction 6 for all the boosters like Staff of Elements, and Lightless Lanterns along with other essential thug gear, at Alteration 7 for Maws of the Earth, Fog, and Marble Warriors, Phoenix Pyre, and at Conjuration 6, that gets your Diversity Summons and also Elementals. During this time, the Mekone Running Squad will be in full effect, so you better give your commanders a Helmet of Heroes, Horns of Valor, and Whip of Command, which give +2 Inspiration, +1 Inspiration, and +1 Morale to slaves, respectively, to reduce the risk of running early. As you hit your research goals, find a neighbor of equivalent power and run them over quickly. Your massive death balls should be able to crack their forts very quickly. Polemarks can be given boots of the messenger or flying shoes to make them very mobile. It's good to have both on hand. If your bless is big, you can give them a holy flask, so they get that bless. With Earth Power, Iron Skin, Temper Flesh, Fire Shield, and Phoenix Pyre, they can dispatch PD, and mundane armies too. Your Air 2 Archons are your main raiders and anti-raiders. You should have most of your forts producing these if you're going to war. Otherwise, you can prioritize your geriatrics in a fort or two for Your Air 2 Cyclopses with Flying Shield and equipment can ambush armies invading your lands. It's good to keep your assassins on your forts to cripple sieging armies, or you can send them out to cripple moving armies if you know where they're going to be. They do well early game with just a great sort of sharpness, but if you give them the Pokemon items like the acorns and the bottles of water, that's the best. Support your armies with elementals. Small rating AARP card holders can cast So Dragon Teeth, which can solo light PD. Evocation 3, you can use Fireballs. Evocation 5, Falling Fire. Evocation 6, Flame Eruption. Alteration 5, you cast Incinerate versus Thugs. Your Air 2 Archons will be using Mist Form, Thunderstrike, or Storm. Your limited water mages can act as buffers with quickness or cast acid spells like Acid Rain at Evo 4 versus Heavy Armor or Acid Storm at Evo 7. Falling Frost is good versus low protection units or Frozen Heart against thugs, Sailor's Death versus any landlubbers. Earth mages can buff with Legions of Steel, Strength of Giants, and Marble Warriors. They can debuff with Earth Meld against elite troops. They can cast Destruction or Iron Bane. Remember, Gigante equipment is resistant to this. Just make sure your opponent isn't as well. They can kill with Maws of the Earth against non-flyers, of course. Blade Wind against low protection troops, and Magma Eruption at Evocation 6. In big battles, you want to use Wind Guide for Mage Evo spammers and Peltas Javelin throws, Curse of Stones at Alteration 4, and make sure the Earth Mage is at Earth 4 at a minimum with plenty of Earth Gems, otherwise they will die upon casting the spell. Fog Warriors, Marble Warriors, Mass Protection, or just one of those at Alteration 7 are necessary. Earthquake and Storm at Evocation 5 are good for you with an Elemental Staff or Crystal Gear. Firestorm, Rain of Stones are all good against mass numbers. Flaming Arrows makes your Peltas kill harder. Arrow Fend and Flame Ward for defense. Heat from Hell and Rigor Mortis and So Dragon Teeth combo together very nicely at Enchantment 6. If you recall, the Spartae are inanimate, so they are not technically undead, but since they're inanimate, they are immune to Rigor Mortis. So in the late game, hopefully you have won by now, but if not, you'll have to do some gimmicky stuff to get sorcery magic. You can forge Crystal Gear with either your Pretender or with Conjuration 6 Spectres that happen to roll both Earth and Astral randoms to make little tiny turbo communions. Like you can get 2 of your Durante slaves supporting 4 masters, assuming they have 10% regen, or 8 masters with 20% regen. Furthermore, your Curs or some other blood mage, like maybe Lamia Queens, can reset Communion Fatigue to 0 with Reinvigoration at Blood 1, so that's definitely something worth considering. At Conjuration 8, you get your big living elementals and also elemental royalty. If you can, your Pretender should cast Fairy Court. Some important globals that are useful for you are Gigantomachia, we already know why. Eternal Pyre and Earthblood Deepwell are great gem generators. You could cast Mother Oak, assuming someone else doesn't already have it, but that's a pretty low chance. You could cast Forge of the Ancients to make your forging even better. Other important goals at Alteration 9, you can get Conflagration, Warriors of Niflheim or Muspelheim versus Fire or Cold nations respectively, Wizard's Tower for instant forts, and of course Army of Gold or Lead, depending on if you need fire resistance or magic resistance. At Evocation 9, you get Pillar of Fire, Flames from the Sky, and Flamestorm. Construction 7, Weapons of Sharpness, Golems, and Forge of the Ancients. At Enchantment 8, you can get Mass Flight, all the Fend spells, Lichcraft, and Mass Regeneration. And at Thaumaturgy 8, you get Purgatory, Dark Skies, and the Worm That Walks. That's it for the Mekone guide. This video took a nice chunk of time to make, so consider subscribing on Subscribestar if you want to see more big content like this. By the way, Awake tier subs get dibs on any games that I host, and the higher tiers get higher privilege on that. Also, the imprisoned donators can commission at least one video from me a month, one big one or multiple small ones. And if you just want to play in any game that I'm going to cast and put on YouTube, you can join my community Discord and send an application. This is not locked behind a paywall. Anyway, I hope this was helpful.